What is going on today, guys? All right, I want to help you, and maybe anybody out there who you might know or might come across this video, to answer one very important question for yourself. Are you racist? Now, what I'm proposing in this question isn't the definitive "are you racist" question. It's just simply one indicator, depending on how you answer this question, whether or not you are racist. And we'll get to the question here in a minute, but this is surrounding all these voter laws that have been popping up in Georgia, Arizona. There's one here in Texas, which I did an extensive video on, going through it line by line by line and breaking down what each and everything in this law actually does. And from what I can tell, it doesn't do anything that disenfranchises, let's say, black people, for instance, or anybody who's not white, as the left and the Democrats keep saying over and over and over again. And I've actually taken the time to read through these bills, and they don't do anything that disenfranchises anybody, much less people of one specific skin color. So it's curious, and it led me to want to make this video. It's also very curious that the cries of racism about these laws are coming from the party of slavery, Jim Crow, the KKK, segregation. In fact, if you actually look historically, the people that got together in towns in the South during the Civil Rights Movement that were hosing protesters down, all Democrats. The sheriffs who were locking up people like Martin Luther King Jr. when he was protesting, Democrats. So it is interesting when I hear Democrats and the left cry racism, when historically they are the party of racism. It's just kind of weird to me. I want to get a little bit more into these voter ID laws. The Georgia voter law in general, much less the voter ID stuff as well. The idea behind these cries of racism seem to be that, well, black people can't be expected to use the internet to find a polling place. And if they do find a polling place, they'll go to the wrong one, and so we can't penalize them for that. And we can't penalize them for not having an ID. We can't expect black people to be able to have an ID. It's all these things that are very, very interesting when you really stop to think about them. There's a term that comes to mind, the subtle racism of low expectations. It's where you just think somebody just can't do something very, very well because of the color of their skin. Well, you can't expect them to be able to do the same things that white people can do, so we've got to adjust our laws accordingly. That's essentially what we're talking about here. And when you oppose a law that says, well, hey, you have to vote at your assigned polling place, you can't just accidentally go vote somewhere else, otherwise your vote's not going to be counted. Well, that's not discriminatory towards anybody except somebody who can't find their polling place, which implies they couldn't make a phone call, or they couldn't use the internet, or whatever. Maybe they didn't have a vehicle. So you're implying that somehow, in some way, people who are, in this case, black, are inferior to people who are white. Therefore, we should lower our standards for voting in this country. It is a very racist thing to actually think and to say out loud. And I know most people on the left don't actually break it down like that. The people in the media certainly won't break it down to you like that when they're talking to you about these horrible, horrible, evil laws that actually have, if you look at them, expanded voting. They've actually added more early voting, not just in time, but time of the day, days of the week. They've actually expanded voting throughout the day of the actual election. They've actually done things like added drop boxes, not taking them away, as the media will tell you, because before 2020, there were no drop boxes anywhere. They were a temporary measure because of COVID. And now they're, yes, taking some of those away that were temporary, but they're leaving some in place. They're not disenfranchising anybody, and especially not based on the color of somebody's skin. And to think so is, in fact, actually in itself racist, because that means that a person thinks so little of, again, let's say somebody who's black, that they don't think they can do the same things that white people can do. And we shouldn't expect them to. We shouldn't expect them to have a car or get a driver's license or be able to find their polling place or use the internet. So we've got to get rid of these racist laws. So the question you have to ask yourself, maybe the question you should ask your friends and family members to find out if they're racist, is, do you oppose these laws because you feel they're discriminatory towards people who aren't white? If the answer is yes, guess what? You're a racist.